Since Jihan is not. Dear viewers, today is 17th May 2026. In 1981, today, our leader, the President of Bangladesh Awami League and the successful Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, returned Bangladesh after her father and the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, along with his family, were brutally murdered on 15 August 1975. Hence, today's discussion is important. Bangladesh is currently undergoing a systematic dismantling of its democratic fabric, not through a single event, but through a calculated erasure of political and legal pluralism. Since the ban on the Bangladesh Awami League under the Anti-Terrorism Act in May 2025, we have moved beyond a political crisis into a human rights catastrophe. The numbers are staggering. Between August 6 and September 25, 2024, police lodged cases against 92,486 people, most of them related to murder. Nearly 400 former ministers, members of parliament, and other Awami League officials have been named in over 1,170 cases, which also include hundreds of unnamed individuals. According to the Dhaka-based human rights support societies, at least 349 cases were filed against leaders and activists of various political parties. Most of them are against the Awami League leaders. Between the July 2024 demonstrations and January 31 of this year, with 29,772 people named as accused and more than 65,000 cited as unidentified suspects. Reports document at least 24 custodial deaths of Awami League members since Dr. Muhammad Yunus assumed power. According to a report by the human rights groups, at least 40 people had been killed by law enforcement since the interim government took charge, including 14 who allegedly died due to torture. But there is a second, quieter purge happening in our courtrooms. Justice Makers Bangladesh in France has recently flagged a disturbing trend in the Supreme Court Bar Association election and district bar elections of Dhaka, Naranganj, Mymensingh, Khulna, Sunamganj, and many others. Lawyers who identify with the Awami League or who simply uphold the high ideals of the 1971 Liberation War are being systematically barred. Their nomination papers are rejected, their physical access to filing is blocked, and they are being filtered out of the legal profession based on political identity rather than professional qualification. The Law Society of England and Wales and the Council of Bars and Law Societies of Europe have condemned these kinds of bar elections. Today, we examine the human rights situation, the political fallout of the ban, and the death of the legal defense in Bangladesh. Joining me tonight is Paulo Casaca, Executive Director of the South Asia Democratic Forum. Paulo has been a consistent voice for human rights in the region and has closely monitored the descent into political exclusion in Bangladesh. Paulo, welcome. Our second panelist, Barrister Mohibul Hassan Chaudhry Naufel, former Minister for Education and an advocate of the Supreme Court of Bangladesh. As a prominent legal mind and political leader who is himself facing weaponized legal charges in absentia, Barrister Naufel joins us from exile. Welcome to the program, Barrister Naufel. As our third guest, we have Dr. Masum Billah, a distinguished human rights lawyer and academic who has been documenting the specific targeting of the legal profession. Dr. Billah, it is an honor to have you. So the first question regarding, and first of all, our segment one is the human rights catastrophe. And our first question is to Paulo Casaca. Paulo, you have described the recent trajectory of Bangladesh as a new venue for totalitarianism and called certain judicial proceedings an extortion racket. Beyond the domestic borders, what kind of threat does this total ban on a mainstream political party and the rise of extremist influence pose to the stability of the South Asian region as a whole? Paulo.
Well, good afternoon for the organizers in London. Good evening for Tapas in Germany. I really would like very much to commend the work you have been doing. Tapas, your latest report on the dismantling the EU monitoring report on the elections in Bangladesh is really a masterpiece that
Thank you.
really is the most solid pillar for us to understand what is going on. Well, Bangladesh is under a dictatorship. There is a mass violation of human rights, especially of minorities, of women, and journalists, political opponents. This in itself, unfortunately, is not very rare in the world space. But what is really more dramatic, and this is dramatic to Bangladesh, and it is perhaps even more dramatic for the so-called international community based in principles, is that this is done on the basis of complete inventions and lies and misuse of the concepts like democracy, accountability, and human rights. And this sort of speech that, as I said before, makes me really remember Orwell. Reading a romance of Orwell is reading what is getting out of the authorities is being whitened, is being washed by the international community and namely by the European Union. And this is a very serious event because we are not only in face of the destruction of a humanitarian fabric, but we are witnessing this destruction being done in the name of the very same principles of this humanitarian fabric. So to launch tens of thousands of cases against people, for instance, Shariar Kabir, who never really took a weapon in his hand, for murder and genocide, absolutely with no objective basis whatsoever, is tantamount to say that whoever the people in power want to persecute will be persecuted because it's very simple. You just have to fill a form, inventing whatever comes to your mind, and this is enough for keeping these people in prison indefinitely, or for calling for the so-called mobs to come and to kill you. Some other times, just as Tapas just mentioned in the question he addressed me, just in the process of racketeering, saying, well, either you pay us or we will just fill a form against you, or we will just kill you. And this is what happens in Bangladesh. This is quite obvious. I mean, I think that no one that wants to see what is happening can doubt about this reality. And this has been completely whitewashed, namely by the European Union, that in face of these circumstances, in face of elections where the main opposition party was forbidden to contest, where all the leadership of this party was imprisoned, assassinated, or had to escape, they speak about the beginning of a democratic process. this is absolutely outrageous, because, of course, there are a lot of things to be discussed in every political system. Things can be a bit better, a bit worse, but this is not really something that can be discussed. When you start a system by outlawing the main opposition party and persecuting everyone connected with it, and actually this is the party that is identified with the creation of the country, and that has been in power a lot of time during the existence of this country. Of course, that we are not speaking about a democracy. It's not. The question cannot even be asked because it's so obvious. So this is the situation in the country, and really, what concerns me the most is the weakness of the international system, because even in 71, when Mr. Kissinger had his brilliant idea that everything is geopolitics, and so we have to prevent Russia to get to the warm waters of the Indic Ocean. That was the vocabulary of the time, a bit absurd, if you just, but never mind about the absurdity of it. But he invented this logic, that this was to the favor of the United States to do whatever Pakistan and China wanted to do against the creation of Bangladesh. We had a public opinion that, to a large extent, managed to stop this process of Western support to the genocide, and we are not seeing it now. We are not seeing the main press coming in the front pages with the reality on the ground in Bangladesh, and this is really dramatic. That's what perhaps is concerning me the most.
Right. The major thing that you have mentioned, that everything is geopolitics, and due to the ban of Bangladesh Awami League, we can clearly see the weakness of the international system being exposed. Now, my second question is to Barrister Naufel. Barrister Naufel, the first question that I want to ask is, with over 500,000 grassroots activists trapped in nearly 1,600 fictitious ghost cases, how can the remnants of the legal framework handle this overwhelming volume of political prosecutions without completely collapsing the civil liberties of ordinary citizens? Am I audible? Yeah. In that case, I think the screen of Barrister Naufel is frozen. Am I audible, Barrister Naufel? Okay, in that case, I will go to Dr. Billa, and then we will come back. Dr. Billa, the question to you, that we are seeing a massive rise in mob justice and retaliatory killings targeting Awami League supporters. From a legal standpoint, when the state bans a party, does it effectively signal to the public that supporters of that party are no longer entitled to the protection of law guaranteed under Article 31 of our Constitution? What is your thoughts on this, Dr. Billa?
I'm afraid very, very dangerous suggestion. The state has a role to protect every citizen. It is not its duty to marginalize a political community unreasonably. There are specific constitutional human rights, international law guidelines when you want to restrict the political rights. Right? That's my immediate response and impression about your question. But let me record my thanks and gratitude to you for inviting me. It has always been a pleasure to share the screen with Paolo Casaca and obviously with Barrister Naufel. Now, the discussion is very serious. We are referring to the suspension or even banning of the political activities of the largest political parties in Bangladesh, in the hands of whom the Bangladesh state itself has been created. The constitution itself was framed by the lawmakers of Awami League back in 1972. Look at the electoral record. They have commanded almost 25% to 98% in different election history that has taken place in the country. And you are banning that party without any judicial consideration. No case was decided by the court, by an unelected government through an executive order. The election commission simply banning its registration, right? And the subsequent elected quote and unquote government confirming the ordinance. And look at the law they have used to ban the activities. The Anti-Terrorism Act passed back in 2009 at the background when there was a rise of international terrorism, and it is being completely misused, abused in a wrong manner to suppress the political dissidents. That has been the travesty of fate and irony of fate as well. Now, you have referred that whether the constitution asked the government to marginalize a particular political community in that way. Obviously not. Let me refer Article 27, the frequently referred article, which speaks about equality before law, equal protection of law. Not only this article, look at the due process clauses of 31, 32, and even the whole fabric of fundamental human rights, clauses body. So it uses every person has this right. The state cannot deprive of life, liberty, body, property, reputation, your fundamental right to assembly, association, freedom of expression, freedom of conscience and thoughts. Everything is protected by the Constitution. Now, when you say that the state has banned without conforming to the principle of legality, necessity, proportionality, it has not been judicially tested. So how can you ban this? It suggests that you are entering into the realm of dangerous terrain of constitutional ideas. So it is de facto, I will argue, Barrister Ball, that it is de facto a suspension of constitutional attributes of a citizen, of a person. And it does not only bring legal consequences, it also invites symbolic as well as sociological consequences. The issue is not merely legal. It is also a civilizational question because it subjects the pluralistic approach, as you have rightly mentioned in the very title of today's discussion, that the argument of pluralistic democracy is subjected to the majoritarian idea of legality. So this banning has not conformed to the tested, established principle of restricting political activities. So I argue that this is completely does not win the test of legality and constitutionality. I rest here for the time being. Thank you very much.
So we have Barrister Naufal with us. We will ask him that he has already heard what Dr. Billah said, that de facto ban on constitutional rights because of this mob justice. But the question to Barrister Naufal is that with over 500,000 grassroots activists trapped in these fictitious ghost cases, how can the remnants of the legal framework handle this overwhelming volume of political prosecutions without completely collapsing the civil liberties of ordinary citizens. That's lawful.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I think both the speakers have rightly pointed out the challenges the Bangladeshi legal system now faces. I mean, these 1,600 cases that you've mentioned, I just wanted to also add on this point that it's not just that the criminal legal justice system has been overwhelmed with these cases, but at the same time, they have formed a complete which was originally aimed to try genocidal acts by the Pakistani military and their collaborators, the International Crimes Tribunal. They have made certain illegal amendments, and I should say through executive order, because the interim government was not a duly constitutional government and it was not elected by the people. So the ordinance that they have passed, which cannot be considered to be ordinances, and they have fundamentally changed the character of the tribunal itself. So you have, under the standard criminal procedure system, this 1,500 so many cases. At the same time, a parallel prosecution is happening in a court which apparently has the power of the High Court, the tribunal, the ICT tribunal. So there's, it's almost a case of a double jeopardy, and same individuals are tried for the same offenses in two different streams. I would say it's a complete legal anarchy here, constitutional anarchy and legal anarchy. So you can't be tried for the same incident in two different processes. So that is what is happening. So, which is why many of our senior lawyers in the High Court have been arguing that Bangladesh is facing a complete constitutional anarchy. And this is what the Yunus government actually wanted. And they had been discussing of this idea of a second republic, that they were at one point wanting to suspend the constitution, but they were struggling to do that because the constitution under which they claimed to have taken power. How can you really suspend the very source of your power and claim that you are a constitutionally viable government? Later on, of course, they made sure that the entire Supreme Court of the country resigns, the appellate division, which is absolutely unprecedented in the history of the region. I mean, we've had military dictatorships in Bangladesh, Pakistan, and also major political upheavals in Sri Lanka and Nepal. Not in any of the incidents, the whole constitutional court of the country, the highest court of the country, were forced to resign en masse. And that is what has happened in Bangladesh. The entire appellate division had to resign. So we have constitutional anarchy, we have a complete collapse of the legal system. And when we talk about the investigation part, of course, you have to investigate before you bring in any kind of charge under the standard criminal procedure system. There is no investigating officer. The police has collapsed. And we have seen cases where for one particular incident in a distant corner of the country, people had been charged across the country. So, I mean, just to give you an example, in my case, I have been so far charged in 170 murder cases under standard criminal procedure code, 170. Now, that is the information I collected from Police Information Bureau's report. But I've been told also that there are many other cases which they have not inserted into the database. So how can an individual like myself be present across the country in 170 incidents at the same time and commit all these offenses? Besides this, of course, there are other criminal cases. Now, one of the interesting part of this large-scale persecution is that you don't have to have a position in the Awami League. You can be a relative of an Awami League supporter. You can be a businessman running your business as usual. You can be a professional, a lawyer, or a journalist. Just because you happen to have some kind of affinity, some kind of affiliation, some kind of connection with the political party, not just the party, but you may have said something in favor of these of secular liberal politics, right? And that's what has happened. And I think what Mr. Kasaka, I think, has pointed out rightly is that there's this inertia and almost a willingness, I would say, on part of certain international actors, where they are justifying this kind of absolute anarchy. He has mentioned the role of European Union, and these institutions of European Union, the bureaucracy, they don't realize that regime changes in countries like Bangladesh create another pressure in the European soil, by way of refugees. For example, Mr. Villa is essentially a refugee now. You are a refugee. You have been uprooted because of this illegal regime change, which obviously creates another challenge in European soil, where you have the rise of the far right, who are not very happy with the increasing number of asylum seekers and undocumented people. And it is the action of, or at least the support of the bureaucracy, of the state bureaucracy of European Union or United Kingdom or United States, which are contributing in this refugee crisis in their soils. And you see, Bangladesh is not a small country. It may not have the geography of Europe or United States, but in terms of population size, we are a 170 million strong nation with a humongous diaspora abroad. Now, if actions by the Western governments or institutions, I won't say West, but I would say European Union in particular, because Mr. Yunus was residing in France and he has a humongous public relation machine in Germany with the help of a corporation like Telenor. And he had convinced the decision makers, unelected ones, I must say. Mr. Kasaka is a politician, and I was, you yourself also, when we studied the European Union institutions as part of our training, how the European Union functions. A lot of the decisions in this kind of situations are the bureaucracy there, right? So the bureaucracy at European Union were convinced through the Yunus PR machine that regime change in Bangladesh, not just the regime change, eventual collapse of the state, collapse of the legal system, constitutional anarchy is well and good. It's good for Europe. It's good for the world. It's good for his so-called, concept of freedom, which is just nothing but a neoliberal fantasy. The man has deindustrialized the country, not just has created a constitutional anarchy, but deindustrialized the country. His actions have led to shutdown of industries, leading to mass unemployment, which will eventually hit European Union as well, and the United States, and maybe United States not, it's too far, but so I think the conscious people of Europe and I would say West in broadly should be told that it is because of these kind of positions of their institutions that they are themselves are suffering. There is obviously social disharmony because you suffer when you have an influx of huge
Right. So
asylum seekers,
right.
refugees. It creates a social tension, right? Yeah. And when you look at the number of activists of Bangladesh Awami League who had no choice but to take refuge in different countries, not just in the West, but also in the neighboring countries, Nepal.
Right. I think we lost him again. But we will move on to a general question to both Billa and Paulo, is that we have a National Human Rights Commission, and what Barrister Naufal was telling us is that there is constitutional anarchy in Bangladesh. People, I mean, especially lawyers, cannot go to the Supreme Court of Bangladesh and file judicial review or writ petitions, right? In this situation, we were supposed to get redress from National Human Rights Commission, but unfortunately, this watchdog, National Human Rights Commission, is silenced. So where do the victims of these false cases go for redress? Very quick answer. From Paulo first, that what do you think, that if the National Human Rights Commission does not work, where should these victims go for redress? Very
Well, there has been some United Nations bodies, namely those who are connected with unlawful prisons, that have made a very clear position, and I think that the engagement with them should be reinforced. But of course, this is not enough. I think that these opinions from these United Nations bodies must be brought to the wider spectrum of the public opinion. But, you know, as a European observer, I would like to say that I saw this coming. I mean, I saw the tremendous lobbying pressure that was made in the European Parliament, exactly through what became known as the Qatar Gate. And I saw it. I mean, I saw the immense load of propaganda that was coming through these NGOs that were formed by the so-called Soros machine, that were depicting, you know, Bangladesh like it would be, you know, an horrendous dictatorship, and of course that Bangladesh might not have been exempt of faults, like most of the countries around the world, but it was essentially a framework, a democratic constitutional framework. And I saw it coming. And as was being said previously, it's true that Bangladesh is, I think, the sixth biggest country in the world, is enormous, but actually it is very much ignored. Nobody knows about it. And it's very easy to fabricate stories about and impressions about Bangladesh. And I think that the whole of the European Union and the United States and most of the United Nations bodies position has simply to do with these lobbies. These lobbies that, of course, exist and act with a lot of money, but that do not reflect the positions of the several institutions, do not reflect their own interests. This geopolitical logic has been, of course, it exists. There is, geopolitics is important, but it has been, I mentioned the case of Mr. Kissinger, which is the most obvious, has been overblown. I mean, it has been used for excuses for actions that have nothing to do with geopolitics, right, or with economic interests, or with military interests. In the end of the day, the only likely result of the support to dictatorship in Bangladesh will be to have a Bangladesh that is similar to Pakistan. That is, make Bangladesh Pakistan again. That's what it amounts to. And right, Pakistan, we know what it is. You know, besides being a dictatorship, a mix of military Islamist dictatorship, is the number one ally of the most important challenger of the Western interests, which is China. So there is no objective interest from the West in promoting dictatorship in Bangladesh. There is a huge machine, a huge lobbying machine that is being financed out of very opaque constructions in the Cayman Islands. Is the case of the quantum funds that animates the Soros campaign, but many others, many other institutions are also financed from there, and this is the source of the problem.
Right.
And unfortunately, we have a very big penetration of these lobbies in governments and in the press as well. Soros was actually the.
I'll stop you there because you said very important answers and issues which I need to address to Dr. Billa, because Bangladesh is becoming like Pakistan, and one of the I would say that one of the things that is making Bangladesh a country without freedom of expression and association is the recent Bar Council or Bar Association elections, where Awami League leaders who, or anyone, any legal professional who believes in the high ideals of 1971 in War of Independence, they are being gagged. They are being, not allowed to participate in the election because their nomination papers are either prohibited to submit or just say that they cannot participate. So in this situation, as a scholar of the law, what happens to the independence of the judiciary when the bar, the body that produces our judges and defends our citizens, is purged of a specific ideology?
Oh my goodness. Independence of judiciary by now has been a sheer pariah. I will come to that point, but let me make a very quick comment on National Human Rights Commission you have mentioned. Look at the National Human Rights Commission that was constituted in 2010 under the leadership of Professor Rahman, Mizanur Rahman. The institution was so vibrant against the violations of human rights that it gained the status B by the international human rights bodies. Now look at the Human Rights Commission today. They are voiceless. There is no. So it means when legitimate expressions, avenues are closed, national institutions, state institutions cannot work properly. The remedies, the way to remedies of the citizens gets lost. It becomes blurred. And therefore, it creates an environment of constitutional anarchy, legal anarchy, societal anarchy, where the society again will revolt. Now, you have rightly mentioned about the current situation of the highest apex judiciary of Bangladesh, one of the biggest bars in South Asia, Bangladesh. Now, at the same time, highly politically polarized bar. But if you look at the developments from 2009 to 2024, even in those days of Sheikh Hasina, the lawyers belonging to opposite political school of thought, they used to get elected. That was the democracy. Now, at this time, lawyers who are supporters, who advocated the ideals of 1970 and who are believed to be pro-Awami League, are being pushed out from the election. You speak about judicial independence. Judicial independence is not an isolated phenomenon. It is not a separate island. It needs to be understood together, conjointly. It is a shared judicial cultural belief. Unless and until the bar, the famous lawyers, the very excogited lawyers, they cannot present the constitutional issues, draw the attention of the highest court on human rights issues. How come the court will come up with judgments, deliberations that will afford the human rights and dignity of people, of the minorities, of the women, and many more. And in that way, if you purge out a particular political ideology, in particular the secular belief, the progressive belief, the ideals of the constitution that has been professed by the 1972 constitution, the constitution will be theocratized. Right, so there will be a rise of constitutional theocracy in the country at the cost of the independence of judiciary.
So I will go to Paulo, because Paulo, you see, you have prescribed that when the Human Rights Commission of a country does not work, then we should reach out to the UN working groups and a special procedure, right? Or even to regional procedures of European Parliament. However, we have seen in Shahriar Kubir's case that even though there is this opinion from UN working group to release him, the government of Bangladesh is not abiding by those recommendations. So in this situation, first question is that what is your recommendation for both Awami League and those lawyers in Bangladesh who could not participate in the election to get the attention of the international associations like International Bar Association, which is the biggest body of lawyers till today, and what we should do so that the state, I mean Bangladesh, at its present condition, will abide by these recommendations. What is your suggestion?
Well, I think the first thing that we have to be conscious is that a lot has been achieved. The United Kingdom Bar Association, I mean, made a very, very important law society. I mean, sorry, I don't for misspelling or naming the organization, but that's one of the examples. The United Nations bodies, that's another example. Even within the European Union, some important institutions did have very important reactions on the Shahriar Kabir case. So you have been doing a lot. Of course, that you do not have billions in the Cayman Islands to make your lobbying more effective. So this is the difference. So you will have to make a bigger effort in terms of clarity and pressure and showing the reason why of your cause than you would have otherwise if you would have a lot of money. That's it. But you are going on the right direction. Some things achieved are really remarkable. And I think that, for instance, the report that you drafted on the European Union monitoring of elections, I mean, because it's absolutely a wonderful report, because it really points out to all of the aggressions made by this European Union body on what it claims to be the international law. Very, very clear, very obvious, undoubtable. And so this has to come into the hands of the parliamentarians. This has to come into the hands of the press. This has to be bombarded always, all the time. And do not be disappointed if you find out that the others reach higher than you do, because money is the most important argument in this world, and you do not have the money that the other side has. But you have the conviction and you have the truth, and these are very important arguments, and go ahead with them. And especially do not be demoralized. Do not believe what they are trying to do right now, which is to fabricate a logic for the European Union or the United States to be interested in the this dictatorship in Bangladesh, because I mean, there are people who have interests for sure. They have lobbying interests. They are gaining from it. But countries themselves, I mean, what there is to be gained by a Bangladesh that is, a disaster. I mean, things have been said about the migratory pressure, but that's only one of the aspects of the issue. Of course, you will have many others. You will have a fabric of terrorists, of course. You will have a country that, well, you know about with Pakistan. I mean, there is we don't have to think very much. And of course, all of this is to undermine the Indian subcontinent, South Asia, on this perspective that the whole of South Asia must become again the country of Islam, which is the leitmotif of all the Islamists. And by the way, it applies to the Iberian Peninsula as well, because it was also a land of Islam sometime before. So don't be convinced of it. No, there is no. It's only they are fabricating these interests, because they have to convince their population that there is some hidden interest on what they are doing. Geopolitically, geopolitics became a bit like sorcery. And so if you continue the way you are doing, in a very sincere, clear way, I think that you will reach it. You will make it. You will have to reinforce your efforts, but go ahead. Do not be demoralized.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings to the question of Dr. Masum Billah, that we have seen the death sentences handed down in absentia to Sheikh Hasina and others.
Mm-hmm.
When the entire leadership is in exile or in jail and the grassroots activists are being hunted by mobs, what is the long-term risk of this political vacuumness?
It has obviously long-term consequences. It will bring grave consequences for Bangladesh society in the long run. It is not a single consequence. It will bring multiple consequences. Firstly, the democratic legitimacy will be weakened. Although people are telling that, well, an election has taken place, a new government is there, parliament has started functioning, that has given an excuse of taking a breathe. But look at the environment, look at the role of the political actors. There is every symptom of rising religious extremism in the country. Look at the consequences soon after the formation of the parliament. 133 ordinances were promulgated. The president was made promulgating these huge ordinances. A parallel legal regime was created. I call it autocratic legal regime. And without any scrutiny, we don't know how it was scrutinized. It secured the nods of the parliament, including the law banning Awami League, including the law, interestingly, the law that has granted immunity to the July warriors, to the July participants. So two things, two-pronged. One, you have provided immunity to one group, and you have sanctioned punishment to other group. This is a two-pronged, two-sword of marginalization. This is what I call autocratic legalism or despotism, to use the term of Baron Montesquieu. Look at the function of the law minister. He was there as the Attorney General, as a prosecutor. Under the amended law, he was arguing before the ICT, which handed down death sentence to Sheikh Hasina. He resigned as Attorney General, right? Then he fought in the election as a member of Bangladesh Nationalist Party, which formed the government. He became the law minister. And as a law minister, he confirmed the law, the very law under which he argued the case before the ICTBD.
Yeah.
So this is a concentration of power, and there is no example, no scope of the idea of separation of powers. All the principles of political science has come to a stake in Bangladesh. That is one. Secondly, another consequence I anticipate, and I will argue, that it will radicalize the political behavior, because it will create an ideological homogenization. Because if you parse out Awami League's political view, the most accepted middle class, pro-liberation view, which makes a balance between theocracy and progressive ideals, pluralistic ideals of the society, rights of the minority communities, of the Adivashis, of women, everything, right? And who are committed to uphold the 1972 Constitution. If they cannot function, ultimately what will happen? The society will be more radicalized, more reactionary. And the symptoms are cultural reactionary, attack to the cultural setups, attack to 32, on Chayanot, on Baul's community, and many more. So the society will lose its pluralistic fabric. Third one is, it will create an idea of vengeance, hatred, and fear. Look at the recent development in the Facebook, the social network. We have termed this as social. Actually, it has become an unsocial network. It has become a hatred network. It is producing enmity between and among the community.
Hatred book.
But yes, because it will give an impression, well, politics is not good. It is all about taking vengeance. It is all about creating a climate of hatred and fear. So it will convey a bad message to the new generation. Once their euphoria will rest, they will not take any decision, any time to take decisions. Well, politics is bad, so we are not into it. So they will lose everything. They will lose their knowledge. They will lose their lesson. They will lose their university. They will lose their idea of becoming a big man, or their global approach to understanding of peace, stability, pluralistic society, etc. So what we lack in current Bangladesh, and it is a crisis of trust. It is a crisis of due process. It is a crisis of political lack of political pluralism. So Bangladesh will suffer a lot unless and until the creation of confidence, the creation of dialogue, the creation of stability is restored.
Thank you, Dr. Billah. So I'll ask the last question to Paulo, that from the discussions of today, it is quite evident that the present parliament of Bangladesh has become a monochrome parliament, and it has lost its legitimacy already. So what is your suggestion that how can we get back the legitimacy? How Awami League should come back on its own? And because you are the one who said that at the end of the day, everything is geopolitics. So how do you see that geopolitics is playing a role to lift the ban on Awami League and restore the legitimacy?
Well, I don't think geopolitics is geopolitics is always argued, but it's not really what leads the actors. I think, unfortunately, namely in the West, their financial interests and how the lobbies are paying them are really the motors. I think that unfortunately the situation on the ground is getting worse and worse, and Bangladeshis are obviously not fools. They understand that they were deprived of a democratic way of expressing themselves, and they are subjected to a faction that is incompetent, that is not answering their desires. And this is going to be the Bangladeshis, nobody else, that is going to change the situation. That's for sure. The real problem, I mean, in the very strategic long-term perspective, is that we should see how can we make that changes of government are natural things that do not have to be done by violence and by unconstitutional methods. This is a very big question that is not easy to answer. But I think that the Bangladeshi people are the most important motor on this transformation. They cannot continue. They are not satisfied. Of course, they are not. I mean, the crisis is obvious. They are not satisfied with the lack of freedom, but they are not satisfied either with the lack of economic progress and the downfall of the economy. And so I think that you should continue the way you are. Don't lose face on your arguments. I mean, go with your arguments and repeat them, and go to every door and knock at every door with your arguments. Continue, and be strong on your convictions. Do not think that there is any geopolitical reason for the West to go against Sheikh Hasina. There is not, and these are elucubrations. I don't believe in them, and I think that sooner or later you will succeed. The Awami League will succeed, hopefully with Sheikh Hasina, if not later, but you will succeed because your cause is a just cause, is a human cause, and it deserves all the support of humanitarian people.
Thank you. So, dear viewers, there is still unresolved questions. For example, how do we restore the rule of law when the equality before law has been suspended for millions? What specific steps must the international community take to ensure the Bar Association elections are free and inclusive? The ban on the Awami League is not just a political maneuver, it is a human rights emergency. How do Bangladesh get out of this? Probably in the future episode, we will get the answers. However, today is 17th of May. Maybe Sheikh Hasina needs to return Bangladesh to have a, uh, a country where there will be no politics of fear, where there will be no autocratic legal regime or constitutional anarchy. And only Sheikh Hasina's return can restore pluralistic fabric of the country, and we can have a fearless society. And thank you, Paulo, for saying that it is not the geopolitical forces, but the people of Bangladesh who will bring the changes, who will bring back Awami League and Hasina. Thanks a lot. Thanks to everyone for joining with me today. I sign off. Thank you.